This is everything you're going to need to know about contouring and bronzing. I'm going to go through everything step by step with you, exactly what it is, how it works, how to apply it, how to blend it, the colors to pick, the products to use, the brushes to use. This is literally everything you need to know. So we're going to work on contouring first, and you're also going to see exactly how it looks before and after, and you're going to be shocked. As you can see, I do have a little bit of concealer and some tinted moisturizer on because we're going to be basically contouring on top of this. Now, first off, let me just very quickly explain what contouring is. Contouring is an art. It's literally about understanding the art of contouring. So what this means is that you are able to use specific colors together, so two shades. One would be dark and one would be light. And when you use these together, it literally creates magic. It creates shadows to give the illusion of depth and different kind of shapes. So you're basically able to reshape your features and resize them using contouring. It's really as simple as that. The hard part is understanding what colors you should be picking, understanding where the placement is, how to blend it, what it's doing, and exactly why you're doing that. I think the area that people get stuck on and where they go wrong is that they start contouring, but they don't actually know why they're doing it in that area and how the length and the thickness and the placement and the blending is actually going to determine exactly how that area will look after. Whereas sometimes I see people that just literally slapping it on, there's a whole load of lines everywhere, and it really doesn't need to be that intense. Now, very quickly, before we move on, I really would love you to subscribe to my magazine, which is online, called The Beauty Breakfast Club, which is everything to do with beauty. It's full of articles written by me every other day, and it covers everything. Beauty, health, wellness. I can promise you these articles are going to resonate with you because I feel like you're really going to feel like I'm talking directly to you. We have new products on there that you're not going to see here. We've got how-to articles, I was going to say videos, articles, so much more on there. Like, you're going to learn how to do certain things that maybe I don't talk about on here, and I would love for you to head over and show your support. It is free, but there is a paid option, which I would personally recommend because you get so much for it, including a room where we can chat, basically. So that literally costs you around a coffee a month. That's it. And it gives you access to the entire site, to every single article, and you get special perks along with that. And yeah, I know you're going to love it. So, and we get to chat. So, and I get to answer your questions. So head on over and show some support. Now let's move on to exactly how you're going to pick your shade. So when it comes to contouring, like I said, you've got two shades. You've got dark shade, which should be significantly darker than your skin tone. Then you have a light shade, which should be just a touch lighter than your skin tone. So what does the dark shade do? Let's go bit by bit. I want to make this really easy to understand. And this comes hand in hand with picking your shade, by the way. The dark shade basically helps to kind of like almost push things in so that it creates a shadow and it kind of just gives more depth to the area. So what you really want is a color that's going to help to mimic shadows, but there's a fine line, especially when you are my skin color, because you really don't want something which is overly cool because it can end up looking very gray and ashy on the skin. So as much as you always see all these contour shades being cool, I personally don't feel like skin tones from olive all the way through to dark shades are catered enough for when it comes to contouring shades, which is why I always go on about picking the color that you like. It doesn't have to be an actual contour product. So you could pick the right type of contour shade from a concealer, which is what we're going to use today. So I really wanted to help you to understand, like, you don't have to look for a contour product and think, right, I've got to stick to a contour product. Think outside the box. Ultimately, what are you looking for? You're looking for a dark shade, right? There are so many possibilities for you to like choose from, like in terms of like products. So don't think that you can only go to the contour aisle of makeup. You can go to the concealer, the foundation, whatever it is, whatever, as long as it's the right texture and it's easy to blend and you find your shade in there. What is stopping you? Nothing. So that's where I'm going to show you the color that we're going to use. Now we're going to use the Radiant Creamy Concealer from NARS, and I'm using the shade Cocoa, and this is a really nice deep brown that is dark enough. Hopefully you can see what we mean here. It is dark enough to be able to create shadow, but it's not too cool and it's also not too warm, and it's dark enough for my skin tone. So it doesn't mean that you would go out and find the same color. It could be that if you're a lot paler than me then you need something which is a little bit on the cooler side. You might actually be able to pick a product from the contour aisle if you want. But I just want to make it very clear that this is for like any skin tone. So it's really a case of understanding what works with your skin tone. Like I said, it needs to be significantly darker. If your skin tone is much darker than mine, then what I would suggest is kind of reverse contouring, because what you're doing then is, and I'm talking about you've got very, very deep skin tone, then what you would do then is use your highlight shade to basically kind of, it's reverse contour. So you're bringing the highlight areas out, which then in turn helps to actually draw the dark areas back in. That would be a whole different video. We're just talking about my skin tone and potentially darker, but not all the way darker, and definitely lighter. Picking your shade is, like I said, it's about mimicking shadow, but don't let that confuse you too much, because I personally feel like when you hear so much about people saying, well, contour is basically when you create shadows on your face. And when you think of the color of a shadow, you're kind of like, well, yeah, it is a bit grayish, but it really has to suit you too, right? If I were to use a very cool tone contour on my skin tone, then fine, it might look good in certain lights, but the minute I go out in the daylight, it's gonna look horrendous. It's gonna look ashy, it's gonna look gray. It's not gonna look like I'm trying to create shadows. It is gonna look very bizarre and very odd. And trust me, I know this because I've tried it, because I remember there was a period of time people were going on because they think they know what they're talking about when it comes to picking a contour shade for any skin tone. And I tried it. And it's not because I thought maybe they're right, it's because I just want to really understand. I knew it was wrong because I know my skin tone, but I wanted to understand why it was awful. And I think I did actually take some pictures of that and show why. Moving forward, like I said, you want something which is dark enough to be able to create a kind of some level of depth in your skin tone. If you're not seeing that it's creating any kind of like depth or any kind of shadow, then it clearly isn't dark enough. So it could be a bit of a kind of hit or miss at the beginning, but that's why I actually think it might be a good idea to kind of like try some shades at the counter, and then like, you can't, obviously if you don't want to try it on yourself, you don't have to, but try it on the back of your hand. And if you feel like, right, okay, that is definitely not too warm, so it's not going to look too bronzer type, and it's definitely not too cool, then it should be the right kind of tone for you. And then figure out how you can make it maybe a little bit darker. There's another way that you can do this. Get a dark shade like this, right? Make sure it's the right tone. It's the right, tone in the sense of it's not too cool, it's not too warm for you, right? Or if it is cool, it's fine if that matches you. Make sure it's that right tone. And then what you can do is, if it is too deep for you, you can always mix it in with a little bit of a different concealer to lighten it up just a little bit. So there are many ways to combat these issues. But if you get a product which is too light, it's going to be harder for you to darken it. So just an FYI. So we're going to be doing the dark shade first. We'll talk about picking your lighter shade in a little bit once we've applied this. Now, what about when you are picking the type of product, like in terms of the texture? Like I said, you can choose from anything. Personally, I would opt for something which is either creamy, not too opaque. You can go for a thicker, creamy substance, like a texture, but bear in mind you will be left with a slightly thicker, kind of cakier finish. So if you want that full kind of heavier look, then go for that. But ultimately, I actually think that a liquid would work way better for you. So think of like a concealer, like a concealer that comes in a tube which isn't too thick. You need to figure out what kind of texture you prefer. I would recommend a cream or liquidy finish because it's easier for you to blend and it's going to look less cakey on your skin. Right, I'm going to be using this right now, so it's got a tip, you can see. We're going to talk about the brushes that are good for this in a second when I start blending it. Let's talk about placement first. I'm gonna do this bit by bit. Now, the first part we're gonna work on, and you can do this in any order, it's completely up to you. I am gonna separate this. So we're gonna work on the cheekbones first, right? And then we're gonna blend it, and then we're gonna move on to other areas. Now, the reason I'm doing it that way is because I really want you to understand that you don't have to do the whole contour, which is like putting lines everywhere. You don't need to. What you can do is pick categories that you wanna work on, or you want that kind of illusion on your face, and then you can incorporate that into your usual makeup routine. So let's work on the cheeks first. What we're gonna do is we are going to work from the top part of the ear. Now, granted, everyone's face shape and features are different. So the placement of your features might naturally be different. Someone's ear might be a little bit higher than what it is on me, and you might have more space on the cheek area than what I have. You might have a smaller nose than me or a bigger nose than me. You could have a much smaller forehead. So all of these things are going to make a difference in terms of what you should take away from this, what part of it. But there's probably at least one that you could incorporate into your routine. Now, let's start with the cheeks. This is one category that you could do. And if you want, at the end of it, you could put all of those categories together and do all of it on your face. It's up to you. What I want you to do is think about this whole area here. Right? Your aim is to basically create a cheekbone. We've all got cheekbones, but some of us have more of an obvious indent, and some of us it just doesn't look as obvious, right? So we want to make it a bit more obvious. You want to look at this whole area and think, right, where do I really want my kind of indent to be? You obviously don't want it too low, you don't want it too high. It's going to be roughly around the middle area where it would naturally look like your cheekbone area. If you have a natural indent there, even a slight little bit, that's going to help you because it's going to give you, it's kind of mapping it out for you. So this is where we are mapping it out with the product that we're using. So what I want to do is start from roughly around here, and I just want to kind of like go in this way. But what I'm aiming for is this top lip area. So I want to aim towards there, but I'm never really going to get all the way in. So we're going to start here. And that's all we're going to do. See how short that is? It's actually very short. Why is that? Because the minute you start blending, it's going to spread. Everything expands in terms of the actual color that you're using. This here may seem like a thin, short line, but the minute I start blending it, it's going to spread, it's going to expand, and all of a sudden it just gets way too long and way too big. If you were to draw all the way across, it's way too much. You want to use a brush which is not too big, that is kind of like, I would say, triple the size of the line that you've drawn, and you only need a thin line like this in terms of width. And you want something which is kind of not too fluffy because it's going to leave brush marks. You want something which is quite a condensed brush. Now, the one that I would recommend, and I will give you a couple of suggestions, the one that I love is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood complexion brush. A couple that I would recommend would be the Hourglass ambient lighting edit brush. That's a great one. Even the Hourglass 15 brush, that's also a good one, but my favorite is this one because I've used it for years and it works perfectly. Plus, you have a bigger side and you have a smaller side, which is going to come in handy a little bit later on. We're going to use the larger side here. Now, what we want to do is we want to buff, and what we're doing is kind of pressing it into the skin. We're not dragging at any point, because the minute you drag, you're actually taking that dark line into other areas that you don't need it. So what we want is for it to look a lot more kind of deeper here in terms of color, and it kind of naturally goes lighter and lighter and fades out. So we are going to just keep patting this. Be patient with this, because I feel like some people pat it and then they're like, okay, it's still quite dark, which it is currently. Can you see how I've just stayed on this part? Now I'm gradually going to work my way in towards the upper lip. I'm going over the edges, and then I'm just taking it here. See that? There? We've got a nice little indent there, and you can see from the front that it's given us that slight shadow there. So we're going to go over and do this on the other side. See how quick that was and how it's blended perfectly because it's the right type of fluidity that we're using. So we're now going to move on to this side. We're going to do the same thing near the top of the ear and then go towards the upper lip. But we're stopping, I would say, even before we get to this area here where the end of the eye is. We're going to go in. We're going to actually pat this on a tissue to make sure there's no excess product. If you feel like, okay, you know what, I feel like this, it's still not blending, I feel like I've put too much on, just dab it on a tissue and go back in to blend. So what you're doing is you're taking off some of that excess product that you've put on. There you go, perfect. We've got that really nice indent there. It's given us that cheekbone effect. And you can see now that even from the front, it just looks like we've got more of a cheekbone there. It's great. Now you can go over all of this with a layer of foundation if you want, but we're going to leave it as this so that you can really see how it looks. If you put a layer of foundation on top, well, personally, in my opinion, it should be a very light coverage, sheer finish foundation, because otherwise you're just covering it all up. If you do that, a tinted moisturizer might be a good idea because there's not really much coverage in that. So it still will come through, but it will give you that really nice soft focus effect. Let's move on to another area now, because this is nicely kind of chiseled our cheekbones, right? Now you've got that cheekbone look there. This is one category you could do on yourself. And I would say that you would follow the same rule regardless of how kind of large the surface area is there. The same rule that you would follow would be to start roughly around the top part of the ear, not above or anything like that, but top part. Again, it depends how big your ears are as well. So for example, if your ears are a lot bigger, it could be that you just start top part, but not necessarily right at the top, if you see what I mean. I think I've got quite small ears from what I get told, but you know, it just means that's why I end up having to go top part of the ear. This should give you an idea, right? So now we're going to move on to another area. We're going to work on the forehead. Now I might be doing some contouring techniques that I don't actually need on my face, but I want to do it so that you have the option there and you know exactly how to do it in case you want to do it. Now my forehead, I don't think I need to really make it look much smaller, but I do feel like I have a kind of roundish face, which means it's like that. It's a bit more like that, right? It definitely gets more so like that when I've put weight on, and I feel like I'm currently in the process of losing weight, so it's maybe not as round as it usually is, but let me explain this to you anyway. If it is round, which is like more closer to being a circle than anything else, then really what you want to do is squish that circle, right? So we want to squish it like that, which basically means what we want to do is add a little bit of that darkness here, because that's going to really help to slim down the forehead that way. Yeah, so that's where we're going to do it, because I would say my face is closer to that side than it is to being long. Now, what if you have a long face, and this is where it's like much longer, it's not coming out on the sides, it's actually quite squished. Then what we want to do is we want to shorten the face, right? So what we do there is, again, my hands are here, the same way they were here, and that's where we put that dark product. Now it's here, this is what we're trying to do. So what we do is we add the products there. So you would basically apply some contour product here, very close to the hairline. You don't leave a gap because otherwise it's going to look very odd. And then you would blend into the hairline so it gives the illusion of a smaller forehead and that your hairline is coming a little bit forward. You wouldn't apply a lot of product here, just a small amount, because otherwise it can look wrong and just weird. Then you would apply a little bit just beneath the chin here, which gives the illusion that this here is shorter than it actually is. That's what you would do for a long face. We're going to be doing it for a round face, or as close, like I'm as close as you can be to a round. I'm closer to a round face than anything else. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to add just a little bit product there and there, and you can see this is close to the hairline. And again, you can see you don't have to do a whole line there on the side. It really doesn't have to be that much product, or you don't have to cover that much of a larger surface area. Now we're going to get that same brush, and what we're going to do here is go into the hairline. See how this spreads so quickly? Honestly, people just underestimate how far a product can actually take you. Look at that immediately, right? It's kind of like darkened it a little bit and it's given it that shadow. Same thing here. Now that's helped to really give the illusion that my forehead is a lot kind of slimmer from there. That's another category you could do, right? Now let's move on to the jawline area. This is a favorite of a lot of people, and what this kind of helps to do is basically make you look like you have more of a snatched jawline. By snatched, I mean nice and lifted and tight, right? We all have a jawline. Some are hidden more than others, and it really does depend on your general kind of face shape or how much weight you kind of carry around that area too, in terms of like, you know, for example, when I'm a bit heavier in weight, I kind of definitely do not see my jawline as much. So it really depends on how visible it is to you when you look in the mirror. If you want to make it more visible, then there is a way to do that, which is what I'm going to show you. If you feel like your jawline is already pretty sharp, then you wouldn't really need to do anything here. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go beneath the jawline, and the jawline is basically this area here. You can see this kind of like this sharpish line, not really sharp, but you can see this area here. Now what we want to do is go beneath it. If you go on it, it's going to look really ridiculous, and it's too facing someone looking at you. Do you see what I mean? The person shouldn't be able to see a line, they should be able to see a shadow. So what we're doing is there's already a shadow here, you can see that, right? We're going to deepen that shadow and we're going to kind of straighten it. So what we're doing is going beneath the jawline and draw a line right there. See, that's actually underneath the jawline. We're going to get the brush and we're going to blend this down into the neck. We're going to just take this, and this is where we are going to drag it, by the way. But it's not a big drag, it's a very small drag. And this is the same way you would do it, by the way, on, you know, how I was talking about underneath the chin, if you want to make your face look shorter. See that? It's given it more of a shadow now. Now that shadow is like quite obvious. So let's do this on the other side again. Take all the excess off of this. You don't want any extra product there. You don't want it to be too much product. There you go. Let's drag this down. That's it, it's as easy as that. See that? We've just given ourselves a snatched jawline. Let's do the nose now. This is another category you can work on. So we're taking off the excess off of this so there's not too much product. Now this is where you want to basically draw a line down the side of the bridge of the nose. The aim here is to basically slim the nose. So I'm also going to do a little V just on the tip. That's it there. Let me explain this to you now. The bridge is this area here, right there, right? That's the bridge. The tip is this here. We've done 2 lines. Granted, it cannot be completely straight because if you've got a steady hand, great, but if you haven't, it's fine. If it's a little bit jagged, it's fine. What you want to make sure, the rule of thumb here is to make sure the width down the middle, the gap between each line is the same width all the way down. It's not going like that, right? Because then you're just making the tip of your nose look bigger. So you want to keep it as straight as possible, and you want to think about how thin you want your nose to look. But don't do it too close together where there's hardly any gap there, because otherwise when you blend, it's just all going to look like one dark line. This is where we're going to flip the brush over, and that's why this brush is so great, because it is absolutely amazing for contour. We're going to flip it over and we're going to use the small side. And this is where we are basically going to drag, and we're going to drag down to the side, down here, because we also don't want it to look like just a random line down the middle. If I just blend like that, it's going to look like a line. If you drag down, what you're doing is creating that kind of faded effect, and it looks like it's part of your nose. Now we're going to do the same thing here. There you go. Now that's done. Don't forget, we've got to work with the lighter shade at the moment, and that's going to work with all of this hand in hand. Then we've got this V here. What I've done this here for is to make the tip of the nose look a little bit smaller. And this is where you just keep it in the same shape and you're just softening the line. It's as easy as that. Now we're going to go for the light shade. Now what does the light shade do? The light shade basically helps to make the surface area look a little bit bigger. So think of black and white clothes. When you wear black clothes, you know it makes you look smaller. If you wear white clothes, it can generally make you look bigger. It's exactly the same when it comes to contouring. So with your white or lighter shade, you want to go just a touch lighter than your skin tone. Not so white that it looks really bizarre. It's just got to be a little bit brighter than your skin tone. That is going to really help all these dark kind of areas that we've done, because now when you apply this light shade, it's actually going to help the dark shade to do its best at giving you that shadow and giving you that depth. Whereas the light shade is going to help to bring out certain features. So this is where, for example, if you want a small forehead to look a little bit bigger, this can help. If you want the middle part, this bridge, to look a bit more defined and help that contouring the nose, you can apply your light shade. If you want, for example, a little bit of a lift, you can apply it there, because that's going to help to lift the area. You can help to kind of like just balance out all this contouring. I'm using my Radiant Creamy Concealer in Chantilly, and this is quite white, but I actually want this to be a little bit whiter just so that you can understand and see where it goes, because the color that I would use usually is probably ginger, but I feel like I just want you to see this a bit better. So what we're going to do first, we're going to work on area by area. So let's work on the cheekbones. I actually don't feel like I need this anywhere, but let me show you a quick trick that you can do. If you feel like your contour is just kind of like all over there, you can kind of clean it up a bit. And what you would do is go beneath where you've contoured. Say for example here, like this. I've taken the excess off this though, so there's not a lot. I've got another brush here, which is also the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood complexion brush, but I use this for light shades. Now this, we're gonna just drag this down, and you're gonna see that what this is gonna do is actually help to just sharpen that contour that we've got there, and you'll see how that actually helps. See that? It sharpens it immediately. Do this on the other end, right beneath where we've contoured. See that? Same direction. You can go a little bit longer if you want, and then you just drag this down. That has just sharpened that whole area up, and it's really helped your contour stand out even more. And it stops everything from looking so mixed up together as well. Now we're gonna go on the forehead. What if you have a small forehead? Well, this is gonna be great at making your forehead look big, because what I would do is kind of cover this whole area here, right? Just in the middle, and then blend it in, and it's just gonna highlight your forehead a bit more. I don't need too much of it, but I will put a little bit here just for you to see. And that's all I'm gonna put here, there, right? And we're gonna just press this in. There you go. That's it. Down the bridge of the nose, I don't go all the way down, because what that's gonna do is elongate your nose. So if you want your nose to look longer, then draw it all the way down here. I only like doing it just there. See that little line there? And then you can use your finger and you just drag down. That's it. And all that's done is help to actually straighten my nose a little bit and just show that there is a gap there. You know, I do have a bridge. Now the tip, I like to actually do just a little line there. You don't have to do this, by the way. I know some people, it's a controversial thing for some reason, but I actually quite like that there, because I feel like it just enhances the tip just a little bit in the right way. I like that little button nose style. Next up, what could we do? Let me just lift here. I want to show you how you can just lift this area. You're gonna go underneath that lash line, and you're gonna drag up a little bit, not too far up. We're gonna get the small side of this, and we're just gonna drag, keep it in the same place, similar to what we did on the cheekbone. There you go. These little things make a huge difference in the shape of your face. Okay, so now what we want to do, I'm going to show you one more trick that I've got here. If you have a small chin, you can put it in the middle, and it's going to lengthen your chin and just make that area pop a bit. Now you can also add it right there, basically from underneath the lip line. And what that does there is it helps to actually lift the area. You know, sometimes you feel like you're a bit dark there. I know people with darker skin tone deal with this, and this really helps me. See this? It's going to really help to lift and brighten that area. There you go. See that? I mean, already look at the difference when it comes to the shape of my features. Everything is a lot more like tight and just lifted, and we've got that shape in all the right places. Now, because I did use like a lot, well, it wasn't a lot of product, but I really wanted you guys to be able to see this through the camera. We're gonna put a layer of the tinted moisturizer that I was talking about on top, and you're gonna see how this will all of a sudden just kind of like add a veil of color, so you can still see all this coming through, but it doesn't look so obvious. The one I'm using is the Laura Mercier Tinted Moisturizer in Palomino 3W. You don't want to apply this with a brush. If you apply it with a brush, you're wiping all of this stuff off. You're going to use a sponge. You're going to just really get that product into the sponge. The sponge can be damp, and we're going to just add a really like thin layer of this, not a lot. And you're going to see how this, all of a sudden, it doesn't look like you've kind of like contoured everywhere. Everything will just sit really nicely. See that? It's still coming through. And that's why you need a very sheer foundation or a tinted moisturizer on top. Because Otherwise you're just covering everything. Now jawline, you just buff over. All of a sudden that doesn't look like it's in your face and it just looks a lot more sculpted. Now what we're gonna do here is we are just gonna set this now. So let's get our powder and just set this. I am just gonna very quickly set my under eyes first. I've got my sponge. I'm just gonna lift up any product that's sitting in my creases. Okay, let's put the powder there. I'm gonna just add my powder there, and then I'm just gonna dust this off with this brush. And then I've got my veil brush and I'm just gonna dip into the powder and I'm just gonna buff this on everywhere. Okay, so now we've actually set all of that. Can you see how we have shape in the face, we have depth in the face, and we've actually given the illusion of slightly different shaping of my features. So for example, this area, it isn't in your face. It's not like, oh my God, she's definitely had something done. It's just subtle. This area here looks a lot slimmer. Now we've also got this area here. Look how that pops through that tinted moisturizer. So we've still got that slight kind of like darkness there, which really helps to kind of just give the illusion of it being a slightly different shape and giving it that depth, but at the same time it isn't kind of in your face. So let's look at how my face looked like before and let's look at it now. So as you can see, we've got a lot of kind of like cheekbone area going on now, and you can see that we've got more shape there. Generally my nose looks a bit slimmer, all of that stuff looks just, it looks in a better shape for my face, basically. Like that's how I like it. So before, everything was looking like, okay, it's a little bit flat. There are certain areas that are bigger than others. And now I feel like I've brought it all back down. So that's what I really want you to understand from this, that contouring can actually be magic for your features, but it's really about understanding it better, and hopefully you've fully understood from this section. Now let's move on to bronzing, exactly what that is and how you can do that even when you've contoured or even if you haven't contoured. So what is bronzing? Bronzing is when you are basically adding warmth and color to your skin. So you're giving your skin that slight sun-kissed glow. You can get different textures when it comes to bronzing. So for example, with contour, it should always be matte. Both of those dark and light shades should always be matte, because otherwise the light hits it and it reflects off and it gives a whole different kind of look. With bronzing, you have the option of having either matte, or you can have something which has a little bit of a sparkle in there, or a little shimmer, and that will add that slight sun-kissed glow to your skin. So ultimately that is what bronzing is for. I'm saying bronzing as opposed to bronze or bronzer because I have used bronzer plenty of times as my contour because I've found the right type of shade. So I know it works well as my contour, but it would be too probably dark as my bronzer. Do you see what I mean? So it's really about, again, thinking outside the box. So I'm saying bronzing. So if you are bronzing, that is a technique. You're using something to bronze up your face, to bronze up your skin. Bronzing can basically end up giving you more of a tanned look. So it can sometimes kind of make you feel like you've been on holiday. It gives you that kind of look. Your skin looks a lot healthier. It just looks better. And plus I feel like it's a good way of getting that sun-kissed look without the kind of sun rays and the damage and everything. So you don't have to always sit out in the sun to get that kind of look. You can use a bronzer, and honestly it's gonna be amazing for you because it really does change the way your face looks. Now you can use a liquid bronzer, a stick bronzer, or a powder bronzer. That is completely up to you. We're going to be using powder today because we're working on top of everything that's already finished. You could use a liquid bronzer and add it with a sponge, you know, on top of your foundation before you actually set everything, or you could use a stick if you find that better. Personally, I try to avoid sticks because I feel like they're a bit heavy for the skin. So I usually stick to creams or powders. The brushes that you can use are varied depending on the texture that you use. If you're using a liquid or cream bronzer, then I would suggest using something similar to what we used for the contouring, like that Hollywood complexion brush or the Hourglass ones that I mentioned, or you could even use your fingers or a sponge. A sponge would work wonders on a cream or liquid bronzer. It gives you more of a diffused look to it. Then if you're using a powder, you want to use a brush which is kind of large enough to be able to give you that sun-kissed look. You don't want it to be so precise. You don't want it to be a pointed brush or something which is very detailed. You want something which is kind of like this veil brush. This is perfect as a bronzer because you can also use that side of it if you want to, but I quite like the larger side. Let's start this. Now I am using my GUERLAIN Terracotta powder bronzer, and you can see it's this really nice warm shade, which is just a very small amount. It's kind of like it's a bit more warmth than my skin. Now we're gonna go into this, and what we're gonna do is add this on certain areas where the sun would naturally hit. It's about being very strategic here because you don't wanna kind of go all over, because some people get confused and they're like, yeah, but the sun hits me everywhere on my face. Like, I'm talking about like, if you were to go and tan, where would it be kind of like more? Like, where would it be? It wouldn't be all over completely even, right? You'd probably have a little bit more if you were walking around getting a tan. And I'm not talking about laying down because that's different. Like if you're walking around, then it's probably gonna be a little bit more on your forehead, right? And maybe on your cheeks and stuff. So what we're gonna do is work along these areas here. And we don't wanna create a kind of like a round circle or anything there. So that's why, can you see I'm skimming? I'm doing it very lightly, and I'm kind of going to the side here. And this is going to really help. See, that's already warmed up my forehead. We don't want to do in the center because I feel like you want that area to look kind of bright. There you go. That's definitely warmed up my forehead. Now let's go on to the cheeks here, because I feel like this gives you this really nice, and I like to smile a little bit when I do this because I feel like this is where you can really hone in on that whole like bronzed look and give yourself that sun-kissed look. And again, we're not going to center. We are kind of like going kind of like on the cheeks, but all the way up as well, so that it doesn't look like it's disconnected from anywhere else. I quite like that. I kind of stay within that area because lower part here, I would just kind of like, just very naturally put a little bit on the perimeter of the face, just so it doesn't look so disconnected. And on the nose, I would probably just skim it, but not a lot. That's it, just a small amount, not enough that it kind of covers up any brightness that we've got. But all of a sudden you can see that my skin is definitely a lot warmer. I feel like it definitely looks like I've been on holiday. Like, I just feel like I want you to be able to see this through the camera, because to me, looking in the mirror, I can definitely see it, and I hope that you guys can see it. But that is as easy as that, honestly. So when it comes to like maybe some extra things that you could do to help, I would say that using a bronzer which has a slight sheen in there, slight shimmer in there, works wonders, because it actually does give you a slight glow at the same time. And I feel like that actually looks better than a matte bronzer. If you are using a matte bronzer, then that's fine, you can use that too, but I honestly feel like with a shimmer, it gives you more dimension, so when the light hits it, it just gives you that slight, it looks sun-kissed, yeah? It gives you that really good, healthy glow. Very quickly, before we move on, I know you've probably heard this a lot from different YouTubers, but honestly, if you could just hit the like button if you really have enjoyed this video and you feel like you've learned anything from it whatsoever, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe. It helps my channel out massively, and just kind of hit the bell, so that means that you don't miss any of my future videos. All these little things actually really do help me to grow my channel, and it means the world to me. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I just want to add that all of this is very easy to do if you just listen and kind of practice. All you need to do is practice. Watch this back, get your makeup out, There's not actually a lot that you need for this. They're quite simple products that I'm hoping you already have. You don't even have to go out and buy contouring products. So let's take a look at the before we had any bronzer on, and you can see exactly what this looks like. Like, you can see that my skin is a lot more sun-kissed. I look like I've kind of been on holiday, and I look like I've caught some sun, and it just looks nice and healthy and sun-kissed. So hopefully now you know how to do this, and just practice, and I know you are gonna smash it. I'm gonna catch you on the next video.